Welcome back to the Systemish show. My name is Tamika Carpenter Carlton. I am your host. So I want to say welcome to anyone who's new and welcome to the people that have came back. Today we're going to be talking about disastrous operational issues that could cost your business millions, right? I think that's super important when we talk about operations and the disasters that do happen because a lot of times we don't know what we don't know, right? So, for all of you who don't know who I am, my name is Tamika Carpenter Carlton. They call me Mrs. Organization. And I'm your collaborator, your reinforcement, your supporter, your listening ear for overwhelmed CEOs, saving them 8K to 30K plus in their business costs without manual labor by implementing high level organizational streamlined processes and standard operating procedures. That's a little about who I am. But I want to hop into what we're talking about tonight. The first thing is performance monitoring, right? That's like your KPIs, which are your key performance indicators. Some people might be like, I don't know what that is. Some people are like, oh, I know what that is. So for those who don't know what that is, that's pretty much the indicators to show how your business is growing, right? The success level. And a lot of times we don't know what our KPIs are because we don't track it. So it comes to your metrics, right? Your KPIs are your metrics, your analytics, your data, right? And a lot of times we don't think to track those because our business could be growing successfully or it could be declining and we don't know until it's too late, right? So you should always know what your KPIs are. You should know how your business is performing every month, every day, every week, every quarter. I think it's super important, right? Some people will tell you you should look at your KPIs every quarter. I say you should look at your KPIs every week, right? Because at the beginning of the week, you put a plan in place normally that you wanted to see for the week, right? So that could be, for example, you might say you want to get 10 clients or you want to earn 10K in your business, right? By the time Friday comes, if you work Monday through Friday, you could look at your KPIs on Friday and see if you met that goal. If you didn't meet that goal, now what happens is you have to figure out why you didn't meet that goal, what transpired, and what you could do differently to the week after. That's the most important thing when you look at your key performance indicators, your KPI. A lot of companies over time, they struggle with performing the performance monitoring because they really didn't know exactly what they should be tracking, what they should be looking at, right? And within your business, you should definitely be looking at your revenue. You should definitely be looking at the amount of clients that are coming in, and you should also look at the people who have peak interest, right? So those are anybody who might not have purchased your services or might not have bought from you, but they're interested in what you're saying or they're interested in what you have to offer. And it's good to track those because those are people you can follow up with down the line if you have any promotions, anything going on, to kind of see like, okay, they may be interested in that, right? So when you start to track everything and keep everything in line, it also helps you with managing your overhead, right? Every business, every company has an overhead, right? That's the money that you're putting out, but it's also the money that you're bringing in. Every business, every company, you have to, in essence, what you have to do is you have to make sure you allot money for any expenses going out. That could be for any products, any services, any training, anything that's necessary for you to manage your overhead. And especially if you're bringing on a team within your business, you have to figure out how much are you paying each individual, whether they're a freelancer or whether there's somebody who's contracted on your team or somebody who's longevity for your team. That could be anybody from your VA, your operations manager, if you have a copywriter, marketing person, sales, right? That's important too. Because when you start to manage your overhead, the overhead of your business and your company, you can start to see your numbers. You can start to see where you excel, but you can also start to see where the loopholes kind of are within your business, which is good, right? Because when you start to manage your overhead, right, that ties into your performance monitoring your KPIs. Because now what happens is when you're managing your overhead in your business, you can see with the KPIs and the performance monitoring, you can kind of see exactly where the pitfalls sometimes are. Because the amount of money you might be bringing in, it might not be the same amount that you're spending. So now you're in the red, right? And a lot of times in companies, they don't know when they're in the red because they're not tracking all this stuff. They just see that, okay, clients are coming in, oh, it looks like we're getting the money, but they're not sure because they're not tracking it, right? Or they don't have somebody in the back end of their business who's focusing on the operations, the systems within their business. So those two are so important for you to make sure that you know, right? Because that could be a disaster within your business if you don't know how you're performing, right? How your revenue's coming in, how your revenue's going out, how much you're bringing monthly, how much you're bringing in and you're going out, right? So we want to make sure that we're actually paying attention to those numbers, and you want to make sure that at the end of the day, any overhead that you have, any KPIs that you're tracking is being put in a place where you can say, okay, every week, every month, every quarter, every year, I have something to look at so I can see how well I did, or I can see how bad I did, and I can see where I need to improve. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a break. Then we're going to come back and we're going to talk more about the disastrous operational issues that could cost you your business millions. Welcome back. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, we've been talking about the disastrous operational issues that could cost your business millions. If you're new, just say new. If you're not, just say here, I'm back again. We've been talking about your KPIs, your performance monitoring, and also managing your overhead. Now we're going to talk about building the right team, right? It's super important to have the right team. And I noticed that when you have disastrous operational issues within your business, it's because your team is not functioning properly, right? So what I mean by that is that you don't have the right key players in the right places, right? So a lot of times what happens is we hire people, we go through a hiring process, and yeah, they might seem like they're a good fit, but then when they start to work with our company or our business, we realize that either they don't have the skills or they're not really qualified for that position, but they might be qualified for another position, right? So what happens with that is when you build the right team, right? You make sure that anybody you're onboarding them properly, right? And sometimes that's a disaster when you don't have an onboarding process for your team in place, because that will cost you millions if you're trying to build the right team and like your SOPs are not in place for your team, right? Your trainings are not in place for your team. Then it's kind of like, okay, you're bringing people in, you're blindsiding them, and they're not going to stay long, right? Because they're going to feel like, oh, I was just thrown into this. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm winging it. Nobody wants to wing anything when it comes to a business, right? And when you want your business to make millions and billions, right? You have to make sure the key players that are part of your business, like your team, they know what they're doing, right? And you want to make sure they can be put in a position where they can lead the people that come in underneath them, right? Because eventually that's what you want to do. You want to train leaders. When you start to train leaders, then you can build that $1 million, $1 billion company, right? But if you don't train millionaires or billionaires and you don't train leaders, then that's when a disaster operational issue comes. And operations is super important in any business because that's the back end. That's how your business functions. Yeah, you can have all the automated systems you want. You can have all the stuff that you feel like you need in place. But if you don't have it working properly, connecting like a puzzle, it's not going to work, right? And then you got to remember when you build your team that you should get to know your team, right? Way beyond the interviewing part, right? So you should give them tasks that aligns with the job position you want them to do, right? You should, right? And then based on that, see how they function, right? See how they maneuver through those. And sometimes you can kind of pivot and you can kind of figure out, even in the interview process, even if you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to give them tasks to do, right? That's okay, because now you can see, have they done the task properly? Do they pay attention to detail? Oh, is this the right position for them or not? Or another thing that you can do to avoid from having a disastrous operational issue is when you start to interview people for a position, you can kind of have people, right, position or put themselves in a position where they're letting you know what skills they bring to the table. So say for instance, you want somebody on your team who's a copywriter, right? And say you're looking for specific skills. But say that somebody comes to you and they've been writing copy for a little while, but they haven't been writing copy for other people. They've been writing copy for themselves, right? So now what happens is they might have the skills to become a great copywriter, but you really don't know because they haven't worked with other people doing other people's copy. So you don't know how they really flow and work with other people, right? Now it's kind of like, okay, a lot of people tell you get testimonials, right? Get client reviews, get all these things. The fact remains is that you can still have these things and still not know how to do your job properly. So you want to make sure that anybody you bring in, you're testing them along the way. You're making sure they're trained. You're making sure they're in the right position. And you make sure they're bringing something to the table. Because if they don't bring something to the table, then it does a disservice for you and your business, because now you don't have the right team. So now your disastrous operational issues are still going to be there, right? Because you want it to function as such where the key players in your team are leaders. I'll say that again, are leaders. Somebody who could step up to the plate and rise above, and they don't have to worry about you standing over their shoulder all the time. You don't have to tell them what to do because they know what to do. So you got to make sure that when you're building that right team, you're putting certain people in place. And a lot of times you want to hire for a bunch of things you might not need. There are so many positions out there where you can convert them into one position, right? So some people sometimes look for, like, for example, in the marketing space, you might be looking for somebody to market like your social media. Now, right, you might be saying, okay, I also need like a social media manager to oversee my social media. And now it's like you're hiring for two positions. Now, you can say, okay, I need somebody to do my marketing, right? But I need them to do my marketing on social media. Okay, maybe you can hire somebody to do your marketing for social media, and they can be that person who does some of the content, right? Some of the actual marketing on social media. Now you don't have to hire two people, you can hire one person for that position. You just have to be smart and mindful and say to yourself, what are the skills and qualifications for these people? And how can I, instead of hiring 3, 4 people to do the job, how can I hire 1 or 2 good people and cut down my costs? It's nothing like not being able to cut down your costs, because a lot of people, what they do, they spend all this money into building a team, and then what they forget is that now you have to keep up the demand in order to pay people. And if you're not keeping up the demand to pay people, now it's like you have all these people but you can't pay them, right? And on top of that, you're not even properly training them. So a lot of companies, a lot of businesses have a high turnover rate. Every time you turn around, they have somebody in place. A couple months later, a couple weeks later, they have somebody else. That person's gone. It's nothing like spending more money and kicking out more money that you don't need to and you don't have to, right? But the other issue that I find with like building a team is that you can have a lot of technology problems, because tech is super important in the back end of your business, because that's kind of like the bridge to a lot of things, right? So now what happens is that with the technology problems, you got to make sure you have somebody in place that can take over those tech problems that can happen. That could be a tech VA, that could be somebody who's good at systems and automation, whoever that person is for you, right? And little do you know that people who are tech savvy, they're good at doing other things besides tech, right? So there could be people who are good with, doing IT. There are people who are good at systems and automation. They're good at funnel building, right? They could be good at, funnel design, whatever it is. Now it's like you don't have to hire extra people when you know where to put people and you know what skills they have and you know if they're trainable, right? If they're able to learn other skills and if they even want to learn other skills, right? That's why we have to be mindful a lot of times with building team members, because we have to really sit down and say to ourselves, okay, how much money do I have to allot to building my dream team, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is we have to be real and look at the long haul, look at longevity. We have to say to ourselves, okay, cool. I know I need this person. I know I want these people. Who's the most important person I need, right? Is it that director of operations? Is it that copywriter? Is it that VA? Is it that, financial person? Who is it, right? And a lot of times we hire the wrong people at the wrong time, right? A lot of people might say to you, oh, hire VA, right, as your first hire. Okay, you hire a VA, that doesn't work, right? Because you're still doing all the things your VA should be doing. Sometimes it's not about hiring what somebody else told you to hire because that's what they did in their business. It's actually looking at all the stuff that you're doing on your plate and you're doing more than once, more than twice, more than 3 times, and you have the budget to outsource. You have the budget to get somebody to come in and take that off your plate, right? And that might not necessarily be a VA, right? That might be, okay, you're doing all the operational stuff in your business. So your first hire might be somebody in the operations department to take on the operational stuff, right? That's how you have to look at it, right? You have to look at it from what are you doing in your business on an ongoing basis that you don't have to, so you can take yourself out of that and put yourself where it needs to go. And a lot of times that's where the technical issues come in, is because we try to be that IT person, we try to be that tech person, and it doesn't work, right? When you're doing webinars, when you're doing events, when you're doing different things, right? You need people to help you. Because, for example, you could be doing a whole virtual event, right? Say you're doing a virtual event online on Zoom and you're having tech issues. How can you function trying to handle the tech and still make sure you're giving your audience the attention they need, right? This is why you need somebody who can take over that while you give your audience the attention. It's nothing like being in a room or being somewhere and your clients or the people who are your potential clients are people who are looking at you, don't have your attention. Because now what happens is they start to look at you like, oh, okay, well, she was just worried about her tech. She wasn't worried about the people who are here. The people who are there to support you are the people that are actually going to help you advance in your business, but they're going to be the people who, listen, know that what you have is for them, right? But when you're worried about all the, the KPIs, the metrics, like how many people showed up, how many people didn't, you're worried about the overhead. Oh, how much does this cost? How much does that cost? You're worried about, oh, does the tech, is it working? Is it not working? You're worried about all the wrong things. When all you need to do is show up, right? And just present your information and talk to the people. And a lot of times in business, that's not what happens. It's because people are so worried about the wrong things. I'm here to tell you that the disastrous operational issues that you're having that's costing your business millions is because you're doing all the wrong things. Yeah, you might feel like you're doing the right things, but you're not. Your key job is to make sure you're there for your clients and your potential clients, and you're removing yourself from, it could be the day-to-day business, and you're removing yourself from all the tasks that you shouldn't be doing in the first place, right? And a lot of times we try to be solopreneurs. And yes, in the beginning, mostly a lot of people are solopreneurs until you get up to the place where you're able to hire the important people you need. But at the same time, you have to say to yourself, what can I, even if it's a project or even if it's something small, what can I outsource or delegate so I'm able to show up and function properly? And that's what you need to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back, we're going to take another break, and we're going to keep talking about this because it's super important. Welcome back. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, say just tuning in. And if you've been watching, hey, we've been talking about performance monitoring. We've been talking about managing your overhead. We've been talking about building the right team and technology problems. So now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about second to the competition, right? But before we get into that, if this resonates with you or if you know somebody this resonates with, share, like, comment. But I want you to join my text community, right? At 347-790-0306 and text the word operations, right? Because it's super important to have these conversations and give these tips and these strategic points about operation because that's how your business is going to function. So what we're going to talk about next is we're going to talk about second to the competition. And this is super key and super important when we're talking about disastrous operational issues because truly, right, in order for you to avoid this disaster, you have to analyze your direct competitors, right? A lot of times what happens is a lot of times we go into business not really understanding who our competitors are, right? So we don't know who's doing the same thing we're doing or who has similar stuff to us, right? And sometimes people tell you, oh, never look at your competitors, just worry about you stay in your lane. You can stay in your lane and still look at your competitors, right? Because at the end of the day, your competitors are doing their market research. They're putting products out there, services out there for people who are asking and seeking and raising their hand, right? So when you look at your competitors, you don't have to do what your competitors are doing because they're not you, just like you're not them. But some of the topics that you talk about, some of the things that you might offer are a little bit similar, but you put your flair on it, right? And I think a lot of times that's how we tend to look at our business, right? We tend to say, okay, how can we up level our products and our services and our offerings if we don't really know what people want, right? And sometimes you don't know what people want is because you're not asking the right questions. But your competitors might be asking questions that you didn't think of, or they might be asking questions that you might need answers to, right? So my thing is, why reinvent the wheel if somebody else is already doing it and somebody else already is asking, right? It's not like you're doing anything because you got to remember, when we're in this internet world, this internet space, the stuff is out there, right, for everyone to see, right? It's like you're not doing anything wrong when you look at your competitors, right? When you say to yourself, okay, what can I do to upscale and uplevel my company, my business, right? The only thing I tell you is don't steal anything from them because at the end of the day, that's a whole nother legal situation you don't need. You don't have to steal something from somebody to be great at what you do. You have to take what's on the inside of you, and then all you have to do is excel at that, right? Because say for example, right? You might be great at sales, and then your competitor is great at sales, but your spin on sales might be a little different from their spin on sales. Your audience might be a little bit different from their audience. You got to remember that. So when you're looking at your competitors, you're just looking at your competitors to see, right? Pretty much who is saying yes, right? To what it is that's out there, right? And who's saying yes to sales, right? Because a lot of times you want to be great at, whatever it is you do, whether it's sales, marketing, copywriting, launches, whatever it is. You want to be great at it. You want to be the best at it. And you want to make sure that you identify with the people you're supposed to speak to. When you can identify with the people you're supposed to speak to, that's what counts. That's what matters. So looking at your competitors, right, and taking a second look at what they're doing, that's okay. Because at the same time, you're only doing it to make yourself greater and better. Because now you're saying to yourself, okay, what are they not saying? What are they not talking about? What are people asking for that they're not giving them? If it's in my wheelhouse, let me give it to them. And that's okay. And that's how this world functions, right? You see a lot of these car companies, right? Like you see Tesla, BMW, you see a lot of these car companies, they have commercials, they have their pitches, their mission, their vision, they have all these things. And at the same time, they're all in the same industry, the car industry. But everybody approaches it differently, right? The way Tesla approaches it and BMW is different, right? And they attract a different type of audience. They attract a different type of people who love Teslas, people who love BMWs. So what you do is might be the same as someone else, but guess what? You're not going to attract who they attract. So you have to say to yourself, okay, in order for me to make those millions and those billions in my company, I have to stay up to date with the latest trends. I have to stay to date with everything that's going on within my industry. So that's like, for example, like in your business, right? Your operations, your back end, anything. You got to know the latest technology, the latest software. You got to know how it works, how it don't work, what did they add, what did they take away. You got to know all of that. Because guess what? It's nothing like having a system already built, but then guess what? They either take away something or add something. Now your system ain't really working. And now, if your system ain't working, your clients can't come into your ecosystem the way that they're supposed to. You have to stay on top of them. And that's disastrous, right? So you got to understand all these things will cost you your business. And you don't want them to cost you the money that you could be making if you don't have these necessary key pieces within your business. So the performance monitoring is super important. That's your KPIs. Always look at your key performance indicators, right? Managing your overhead. Know how much money you have coming in. Know how much money you have going out, right? All your expenses. Building the right team, your dream team. Make sure you have systems already in place, things already in place, like SOPs, to train them, right? And even make sure you have a budget allotted for them to get additional training so they can be the best at what they're doing. And make sure also within your team, you put them in the right positions. The technology problems, you're going to have technology issues. That's just given because technology can work today, can be out tomorrow, and that's okay. But just prepare yourself for when you do have those issues, right? And second to the competition, you could never be second to the competition because you are your own competition. Let me say that again. You are your own competition. So it's only one of you, so you're always first to the competition. So never look at someone else being second, third, fourth. You just got to do what you do and stay in your lane, but also make sure what the trends are and make sure what your competitors are doing as well, right? Learn from them, right? That's what you're doing. You're learning from them. You're learning from what they're not doing, right? Or you're learning from what they're doing, but you could be doing better. That's what it is. So I want to say to you guys, everyone who's out there, if this was really helpful to you, share, like, comment. And if you're the type of person that you know your operations, you're having so many issues, it's jacked up, it's costing you millions, right? Text the word operations to 347-790-0306 and let me help you with your operations, right? Because I think that's super key. And join a community where we talk about those things, right? Because I don't want you to lose millions, billions on your business. So if this was helpful to you, right? And if this was super helpful to you, then what I want you to do is do the things that I asked you to do, right? And just, it's okay. Just be real with yourself, be real with your business, and look at all these things and just know we're here to help you. So, disasters, operational issues that cost your business millions, this is what we talked about today. So, tune in next week. We'll be here at the same time, same channel, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.